Welcome to Data Driven Health Radio.
Hey everyone, this is Dave from Data Driven Health Radio, and super excited today to be speaking with a total badass in the world of biohacking, data collection, and also works for a super cool company. He and I have been exchanging tons of messages over the last few weeks, nerding out on every possible type of quantified self metric, and just had a really, really great connection. So please welcome Chuck from Oura. And Chuck, thanks for being here. We've got a lot of really nerdy stuff we're going to talk about today. We're going to do some screen sharing, look at some data, and thanks for being here. Give us a quick intro.
All right, so thanks for having me on. We have similar backgrounds. I also come from a technology background.
Yes.
Computer science, electrical engineering, startups, lawyer. Don't hold that against me.
Nope, we won't.
And, yeah, along the way, I got started. Well, I've always been doing a lot of hiking, running, cycling my whole life.
Yep.
And, along the way, I think it was in like 1986, I was down at MIT and met a guy that was talking about binaural tones and how you could entrain your brain. And that's when I really got started in thinking about sleep, stress, relaxation, and hacking your life. So I've been in this for a long time.
You're an old school biohacker.
Yes, and I because of that, I slowly got connected to a lot of the startups out of MIT and testing their early stage products like Zeo, for instance. Which
That's the product that got me hooked, actually.
And it was good but bad. The headband always fell off a lot of nights, but it was interesting. And then I was a little sad when they finally went out of business, but they were ahead of their time.
Yep.
And so, and I've tested lots of wearables. I got in on another startup out of California that was building a web portal for GPS data. And so we worked together to convince Garmin to develop a wrist-based GPS, the original forerunner.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So you were the initial spark for that.
Well, not really. These guys had the idea. There was a guy that had gone to college in Maine, Colby College, and Clark Weber, works for GoPro. But he and his partner did that. But I had a bunch of they called rhinos that we use the data off those, so that we could, check the data for Garmin. And they're the ones that actually approached Garmin to say, hey, could you put this on a wrist? And so they did. So we had all the early beta versions of that, and then that took off and started testing for Magellan because Clark went there, and just a bunch of companies, you name it. Philips, Withings tested a bunch of their pulse oxes. I kept breaking them, but they kept sending them.
Fair enough.
They weren't waterproof.
Well, now you're at one of the coolest companies out there, arguably. Super hot. You guys have created a monster over there. So tell us how you ended up at Oura and just what's going on there. It seems like this Gen 2 ring has created a huge buzz. There's incredible interest in the Gen 1 product. So how'd you end up there, and give us some insights into what's going on over there?
Yeah, so real quick. So I'm an endurance runner as a side hobby.
Yep.
And at the time I was, running a lot of marathons, trail races up to, 50 miles and beyond. And, I always wanted to find something that I could gauge my recovery. And so, some of the sport watches like Cintus and stuff, working with First Beat, started adding stuff like, after you get done with your training run, it'd say you need to recover 19 hours. And give an example, my wife and I were doing a 6-day stage race in the Colorado Rockies. And of course, every morning, every day after the stage, it would say, you need 40 hours to recover. This was on an Ambit symptom. Like, no, I don't. I don't have time for that.
No, go sleep for 3 days. You're going to come back to us.
There was nothing out there. So I was looking for something that actually gave me my recovery in the morning, not just the entire, but looked at other metrics. Like sleep.
Yep.
So I met a fellow who was involved in startups, and he connected me with a guy that knew a company that was starting out of Harvard called Whoop. And so I went down and met with them and was an early beta tester of their platform. And they, they were looking at sleep and metrics during the night, like heart rate, HRV, and from that giving you a recovery score. And I said, this is great. And then it was, as I was involved with testing with them, I was always keeping an eye on Kickstarter. And saw this thing come up, an Oura Ring. And I'm like, oh, interesting. This looks like what Whoop does, but on a ring. Your wrist is like, the best real estate, and I want to wear a Garmin when I run, not a Whoop. And so, or soon to. And so, I've been burned on a couple of Kickstarters. My wife's like, you're not doing this. So they said, hey, would you come work for us? And I'm like, sure. Like, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Cool company. So that's how I got
involved. You can indulge your inner data nerd at every possible level when you're actually working for the company.
Yeah, so I started with them in November 2016.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's been a fun time.
Yeah, I got connected to you guys through, actually it was Rob Wolf who introduced me to Harpreet, who's based in San Francisco.
Yes, yeah, he was in New York City when I first started, and he moved there last spring, I think, of the summer.
Yeah, so he and I met, I think maybe 8 months ago, had a coffee in San Francisco, and he got us some rings to test out, and I realized you guys just have a wonderful API, which was really well done and super easy to integrate. So it was a no-brainer for us to build it into Heads Up Health. And
there's one thing you got is super talented people in Finland.
Yes.
Between the engineers that are doing the hard work on firmware and circuitry to the guys working on the cloud and back-end systems to the programming staff. Both the web and iOS and Android. We're just a really, really zipped up team.
Yep. There's a lot of talent out there. I mean, I know you mentioned it's a remote, close to the Arctic Circle part of Finland, but it seems that there's a startup hub actually out there.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting, and a lot of people don't really think about this, but as a country as small as it is and as remote as it is, they have a really good education system.
Yep.
And if you think of the companies, like people think of Nokia and they think, a mobile phone manufacturer that tanked. Nokia actually makes the big equipment that runs telephone companies and cell companies. And they're like one of the biggest in the world. They actually bought Alcatel-Lucent.
Yep.
So it's them, Ericsson, and...
That's a monster whale to swallow there.
So Polar's started there. Suntu started there. Beddit, that Apple just bought, is from there.
Something in the water out there that's creating all these brilliant engineering companies.
It is there.
Yeah.
Which is another bed-based system.
Yep. Have you tried that, by the way?
What's that?
The Beddit? Have you tried it?
No, I talked to the founder.
What's the name of it? Is it MFit or?
Oh, EMFit. I've talked to the founder of that company at CES last year. So that's like Beddit on steroids. They're going after a different market.
Got it.
So they do HRV throughout the night, which the original Beddit Pro did that. And that's what I was trying to get from Beddit.
Yep.
They weren't selling it anymore at the time I contacted them. But yeah, EMFit, they don't have a mobile app. It's just on the web. But they do HRV. And I'll show you on our cloud, some of the stuff I talked to them about, which is cool, that we do also. So a lot of, like Whoop only does HRV in a small window. They try to do it during shortwave sleep. Whereas EMFit and Oura, we do it throughout the night.
Yep.
And that's important for another reason I'll get to when we show the cloud. So they're there, and I mean, there are a bunch of other companies. And FirstBeat, which does the firmware that Garmin's bought big into. So all the cool things that Garmin does, like on the new 935 Phoenix and the Phoenix 5 series, you can actually see your anaerobic and aerobic training load on the watch. They give you, of course, the recovery score. All of them are going to be moving into sleep metrics, and that's all being done by FirstBeat, which is also out of the Oulu area.
Well, you made an important subtle comment earlier. You said that part of the intrigue about the Ring was that you want to wear the Garmin on your wrist when you're running.
Right.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would like to do the same. And most of the traditional devices like Fitbit and others are wrist-worn devices. So wearing two on the wrist is a little bit ridiculous. So that's, I think, part of the benefit of the Ring. Admittedly, the first-gen Ring is a little bit on the bulky side, but that's because it's a first-gen product. And
Well, no, actually, it's not because it was first. I mean, it is a first
okay.
product. It was a
Yep.
market test, but I mean, if you think of the size of this,
Yep.
and
I got mine here.
right. So the fact is, when the design was solidified on this,
Yep.
nobody made curved batteries.
Got it.
So that's why the thing on the top is really the battery.
Got it. Yep.
And for everything that goes on, if running these infrared sensors at 250 times a second throughout the night, you need to have a pretty good sized battery,
Mm-hmm.
so you could get 2 or 3 days out of the ring. Which
Yep.
I know a lot of people think that's pretty piss poor.
I don't have a problem with it. I just put it on the charger. It doesn't take long to charge.
Well, that's what I tell people, and I've even told people, like at the Slush conference where we actually introduced the new ring, which looks more like a men's wedding band.
Yep.
And even though that technically has a smaller battery, with
Mm-hmm.
the improved electronics and battery management, which we've done really well with, that's going to go at least a week. It may go
Yep.
longer.
Yep.
But even I told people I would charge it every day. It's better for the battery life.
Yep. I do the same. Yep.
It only takes 10 minutes.
Yep.
You get up, you just look at your sleep score, and boom, you put it on the charger, you go to the bathroom, make coffee, and you're done.
So we've obviously got a lot of people who are very familiar with the product already on our system, but there's probably some listeners who are not familiar with all of the capabilities of this ring, why it's so awesome in terms of calculating a recovery score. So why don't we just take a quick step back and talk about what it is that the ring tracks today with the current version, and then we can talk about what's coming out with the next one. I've read the features on it. They sound incredible. So for people who are considering getting this product or may not be as familiar with it, let's just talk about the current version where it's doing activity during the day and then what it tracks at night and how that plays into the recovery score. You've got decades of experience here. So I'd love to hear it in your words, just in terms of what Gen 1 can do. Yeah. And then we'll segue into what's coming in the next product, and then we'll nerd out and look at some data.
Right. So starting with activity, and not that it's not important. Movement is important.
Yep, agreed.
And the first gen ring and even the second one adds a gyro. The first one has just an accelerometer. Mm-hmm. Accelerometers work really well in a plane if you maintain that action in the plane. Mm-hmm. So it's the same, movement, this kind of thing.
Yep.
Change all of a sudden, it takes a while for accelerometer to recognize that.
Yep.
But also it based on where it's a ring, it's on your finger. It does really well at tracking walking and running activities. It certainly isn't going to work really well for perhaps some other things, even swimming. We'd have to do some work to recognize that you're swimming and then count the reps. And we just haven't gotten around to doing that on the rings. We're already working on the next ring. Mm-hmm. But one thing about activity is, I think the more important things is, even if you're an elite athlete, like an ultra runner or advanced cyclist or whatever, the important thing for your coach is what you do in your training block. And you probably have very specialized tools for that. Mm-hmm. Power meters, Strava data, Training Peaks, whatever. But as a coach, what would want to know about, when you get up in the morning, are you recovered or not? So I can decide what training block you're doing that day. So no matter what you do for training, and even if the ring doesn't pick it up, and it likely won't for a lot of things, it is tracking most of your movement during the day very accurately. Mm-hmm. And even if you're, again, unless you're the extreme athlete that's running, 6 hours a day, most people's exercise encompasses like an hour, maybe an hour and a half a day. And the rest of the time, the ring is definitely picking that up really well.
Yep.
But going back, the more important thing is, how are you recovered in the morning? And that's based on the stuff we track at night, which basically we give you a sleep score that tells you, was your sleep restorative or not? Mm-hmm. Okay. And there are lots of different contributors that go into that. And those are shown on the app.
Yep.
The app screen, and actually on the cloud too. And so for me,
so let's talk about those, Chuck. So with the sleep index, for example, for those who are not familiar, it is providing a sleep cycle analysis.
Yes, you get all this, you get all the sleep thinking, so you know the time you were sleeping, how much of REM, deep, awake, light sleep you had.
Lowest resting heart rate, when that occurred during the night.
Those go more towards recovery.
Okay.
But so other things. So there are lots of things that go into. So the sensors we have in the ring, we of course have the 2 infrared sensors, and as I mentioned, those sample at 250 times a second.
Yep.
That is huge, and those are at the base.
Yep, I see those here.
The reason those are at the base of the ring is that you have 2 arteries at the base of each finger.
Got it.
Most wearables are wrist-based. Those use LEDs that run off capillaries. And the problem with that, it's a very noisy place to measure data. The blood flowing through capillaries speeds up and slows down as it's going through your skin and sub-Q layer. So that creates a challenge for trying to figure out what your heart rate is.
Sure.
People have different skin colors. They could have tattoos, more hair, less hair, the sun. And then you also get vibration. No matter how tight you have it, your skin will vibrate with a watch on it because of the sheer weight, even if it's 48 grams. So all that together, at best, wrist-based trackers, even the best ones, and they've gotten better, they're getting an estimation of heart rate.
Sure.
And people compare them to chest straps. Those are estimates of heart rate. And if you don't believe me, read Valencell's white papers. They do all the testing on this stuff. And
what are those papers?
Valencell, it's a company out of, I believe, North Carolina. And I can send you the link later if you want to add to the show notes.
Yep.
But they've got a really cool lab, and they test like everything. Wrist-based optical sensors, chest straps, none of them are accurate. If you want accuracy, you need to go in a lab with expensive chest holsters and test something. So anyway, because we're testing off arteries with infrared, we actually can measure the full, what's called arterial pulse waveform. And that, from that, the quality of that data, we get clinical grade heart rate, heart rate variability, and respiration rate. And
remember,
nobody else is doing that.
Harpreet sent me a paper, actually. We can share that as well. But it was comparing the HRV of the ring to, was it an ECG? Is that right?
Yeah, so it's a holster in a lab. So it's expensive stuff. And it's 98 point something percent. And then chest straps are not that accurate.
So just to repeat for those, just to reiterate that, it's the difference between on the wrist, which is optical LED, versus at the base of the finger. And I know these little nubs on the bottom of the ring, they fit up really snug against my index finger. And that's where I wear the ring. So I know it's a really, really solid connection, much more solid than the connection from my Fitbit, which is, when I'm on the computer, I leave it loose so that I can push it down and it doesn't get in the way. Yeah, exactly. But this thing fits super snug. It doesn't budge when I go to sleep. I know I've seen you chime in on some of the Facebook groups around people who may have some suspect data, but you do need to be sure the ring is snug so that it's collecting accurately.
I tell people at conferences, people go and try like, I can't get off it snug. And that's not snug, is like rotating it. Is how much effort it takes. It should take a little bit of effort during the day to rotate your finger. And what I tell people as far as sizing it is size it for your, I'm right-handed, so this is my left hand. Size it for your left-hand finger.
That's what I do.
At night, move it to your dominant hand. That finger's slightly bigger. And you'll have trouble getting it off in the morning, but you'll have a nice, super snug fit.
So you recommend the dominant hand index finger at night. Is that correct for sleep?
Because you have their fingers, most people's fingers are slightly bigger on their dominant hand because of writing and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Drinking water. So anyway, so we have the infrared sensors. So from that, we use all that data to look at like sleep staging. At the very top of the ring, it's hard to see. There's a little dot. There's a highly accurate temperature sensor. So on the inside of the ring. And it's up by the charge.
Yeah, I see it here.
Charging plate. So anyway, there are wearables that have temperature sensors, and they mainly use those to determine if it's on your wrist or not. So they know to turn off the optical LED.
Got it.
Kind of humorous. We have off-finger detection too, but we actually use the temperature sensor for sleep staging and also to tell if you're getting sick or overtrained.
I've seen those insights before. It looks at night overnight changes in body temperature.
So it's super accurate. What people don't realize that the only time your core temperature, so if you use a thermometer in your mouth, your ear, or the other place we won't speak of,
we won't do that. We won't do that demonstration here today.
No.
Next show.
So anyway, while you're sleeping, it's part of our nocturnal biology. your core temperature pushes out to your skin.
Yep.
And so because of that, we're getting highly accurate, and we validated this in a lab. Some pretty funny self-made equipment to test that, but very accurate to your core temperature while you're sleeping.
Yep.
Now, we don't show all the data points while you're sleeping of temperature, because it'll start off not accurate, get really accurate, and then get less accurate. So we basically figure out what your average was when it was good data, and then we show you that average of those for the night, and then we trend those on like a daily value. And from that, we can see, if you're overtraining. It's going to be used for looking at overtraining analysis. Can we look for impending sickness? And I can show you that on the graph when I got sick, one of my trips from Finland. And then women can actually use it to track the menstrual rate. Now, women are smarter than men. They know when they're going to have their period. But if it was us men, we'd like all of a sudden say, "Ooh, what was that?"
We'd need some device to give us a good smack in the head and let us know that there's this.
We're not the smart ones in the family. But anyway, so we have that in the accelerometer.
So there's body temperature, core temperature. There's the sleep cycle analysis. There's the activity, which we've covered.
Yeah, So, and then the accelerometer, the temperature sensor, and the infrared's all used to give you your sleep score. Then the recovery in the morning is based on how restorative your sleep was. So we take some of the sleep metrics, a little bit of the activity. Some endurance athletes that either can't wear the ring because of their activity while they're working out, or people are riding bicycles say, well, it's not picking up my cycling. Well, activity has a very low weight in the algorithm, so don't worry about that.
I've seen that. Yeah. I mean, I don't even wear it some days, but I still get really, really good recovery indexes because I'm wearing it at night.
Yeah, it might only affect your recovery score by a point if you didn't wear it. So anyway, it's still very accurate. And so we use activity, and we look at what you mentioned, heart rate earlier. The important thing on recovery on that, as you mentioned, is not only how low it is trending, but when it happened. If it's later in your sleep, it means you were revved up. And I would suspect you either exercised late, you drank alcohol.
Meals. Yeah, late meals will throw that off for me. So I've started to make these associations myself just from looking at the data, and would say, oh, your lowest resting heart rate was at 4 a.m. And sure enough, I'd have a big late dinner or something like that, a late workout. So it definitely picks that up. These are all the things that are helping me course correct my routine. I don't train as late. I don't eat big meals as of late because now I have this data. And when my recovery scores are on point, I can see, oh, your lowest resting heart rate was like 1 a.m. Perfect.
Yeah. And so we'll, one of the things we're adding in the new app that's coming out with the new ring is the ability to add notes. And eventually you'll be able to add those in both the app and the web. And so you can, like if someone said, like you can with other apps, like you probably played with Sleep Cycle.
A little bit.
Yeah. So when you go to, Sleep Cycle makes it easy because their architecture is you open the app right before you're going to go to sleep. And so they can capture when you intend to go to sleep. And then you go through a short questionnaire, and basically you can set up your own tags of sleep cycle. So you can say, I drank 2 glasses of red wine, or more than 2 glasses of red wine. I had a late meal. You wore blue blockers. I didn't wear blue blockers. That kind of stuff. And then you set your alarm, and boom, you go. So you'll be able to do that kind of stuff, and then we'll be able to help use that along with historical data for you to help you better understand the trends and do better analytics. Sort of like big data. I hate that term, but we'll be able to dig into the data, your data, with your tags, and help you, give you clues on some lifestyle changes you might want to make to improve the sleep. So
cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everyone I talk to who has it absolutely loves the way it calculates the recovery index in the morning based on all of those different variables. So I think that part is incredible. There's a lot of people trying to optimize the scores, not surprisingly. And there are different things I've noticed that work that are mostly reproducible. So some of the things that I've been able to implement based on this are, first of all, just shutting off the stimulating work electronics by like 7 o'clock and starting to let my nervous system gear down. That seems to help. These are my own personal
Right.
learnings, and I'd love to hear yours as well for optimizing recovery. Second one for me is just being in bed at like 9 o'clock and just reading for an hour before I go to sleep. That seems to help a lot. Just winding down. I'll fall asleep around 9:30, 9:45. Late meals, again, heavy meals seem to throw off recovery, not surprisingly, because your body is devoting all of this energy to digesting a heavy meal when it should be doing all of the detoxification and recovery process. So late meals, late workouts. I haven't actually purchased blue blockers yet, or the orange lenses.
Right.
I'd love to hear if you have any information on that, anecdotally or otherwise. But these are the things that you can definitively test and very consistently reproduce these effects. I've also, on the previous show, we interviewed Dr. Philip Blair, and he's with a company called Elixinol.
Yeah.
A very, very high quality CBD oil.
Yeah.
So I just ordered some of their product. I've been testing it this is my third night I'll be testing it, but my sleep score was 91 yesterday.
Okay.
So it's taken me, that's the best I've ever had. So it's taken me up a little notch, but you do have a pretty accurate way to start testing little interventions like these, like CBD oil, different lifestyle, I guess you'd call them N equals 1 for optimizing. So those things have worked really well for me. You're way more plugged into the community. So what are some of the best practices you see working and others report? Again, all N equals 1, but what can you share in terms of best practices?
Right. So you touched on one of the things at which I always tell people, if there's only one thing you've changed in your life, be consistent about when you go to bed and when you wake up.
Yep.
And that is partially determined by your circadian rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And, you may have heard of Michael Bruce's book, The Power of When, but he talks about 4 animals. In fact, it's almost infinitive variations. And there was just a Nobel Prize given to 3 or 4 scientists on identifying the genes that basically determine your circadian rhythm.
Yep.
So once you know that, and we actually in the new app will actually show you the sweet spot of when you should go to bed from looking at when you went to bed versus your sleep score, and doing correlations on when you should go to bed. And so that's going to be the beginning of some circadian stuff we're adding to the app. So that's the first thing. So for me, I know my sweet spot, and my wife hates this, is at 8 o'clock, I feel a huge amount of pressure to go to bed or start getting ready for bed, which is pretty early.
Yep.
So usually, I have to be starting my routine for bed by 9 at the latest, 9 p.m. But the things I do that I found that really help is all of our lights, with few exception, are Philips Hue lights, and they at sunset they mimic the sunset, but in the house. On top of it a little bit later. So they haven't come on yet, but they will be soon. They'll ramp up, and then at 8 o'clock at night they all go red, completely red. Take out anything but blue. I mean, no, red. I can't remember what the nanometer spectrum is on that, but. And then when
so how long have you had the bulbs for?
Probably started with them 3 years ago, maybe. They're pretty new to the market.
And do you need any type of? Are they connected, or how does it actually calibrate?
They have some sort of radio in them that connects to a hub.
Got it.
And I don't think they're using Wi-Fi. They may be using some.
So you purchase a hub, you purchase the bulbs, and then that has its own communication system to say, based on time of day, it will start changing the hue.
So what I use is, I'll go back up a bit. In the morning, Hue has an app, and they've got a pretty decent wake up. They call them routines, and so you can set. So I set one to some lights that aren't close to our bedroom, but they're close enough. So at like 5:15 in the morning, I have those over 30 minutes sort of ramp up like a sunrise. And then I start a second set, at like 5:30, ramping up there closer to the bedroom and kind of move closer to the bed. So we're in the bedroom. Yep. And it's like a silent alarm. We don't even use an alarm. It wakes us up when we need to get up before 6. Yep. So at night, I use if this, then that. the cloud app,
Mm-hmm.
set the triggers for like turning the lights on at a certain time, like sunset, and then slowly increasing and then decreasing, then finally turning them red. So that's with lighting. I start wearing, well, right now I'm wearing sort of minimal blue blockers, Isolor. It's mainly for computer screens. They get rid of the high intensity blue light during the day, but they don't block the rest of the blue light. Around 7 o'clock, or as soon as it gets dark, depending on the time of year, I wear Swanix.
Yeah, I'm familiar with those. Yeah, I saw a couple, them and another company, TrueDark, over at the Bulletproof conference this year. And I was pressing them to see if they had any research that I could review on those. I mean, intellectually it makes sense, but I just wondered if they had any data they could share, and I didn't find anything.
Yeah, I don't think there's any like solid peer-reviewed science, but
it's just good common sense.
It's common sense, and a lot of people do well with them. I mean, they report big results. So I've got the TrueDarks are a little pricey, and they really, those things cut out everything. I mean, what you figure, you're almost like in a submarine.
Yeah.
And Dave Asprey's behind those. But anyway, the Swanix are less pricey. They're not quite as extreme, and I think they're good enough. I mean, you know, between my red lights in the house, and when I get in bed, like around 9 o'clock, I'm not looking at a computer or anything. I look at my iPhone, but I do the shortcut to turn to just grayscale.
Yep.
And I wear the Swannies for that. I do red light therapy using a panel on my chest, and a lot of people have found like an N equals 30 or 40 that improves sleep quality, especially deep sleep.
Yeah, I'd love to get some information from you on all of these things, and we can list them out for people who want to start testing this stuff.
Yeah, as far as if you want extreme blue blockers, you go on Amazon and get HDE laser glasses, red ones. Those strip out everything but red because they're for welding with red light.
Yep.
So those are $10 on Amazon. They come with a nice case.
Yeah,
so
disposable.
But they're safety glasses too. So they actually, if you have overhead white lights, if you work in that environment, it actually keeps all the light out, the tops and the sides.
Yep.
Because safety glasses all for $10.
Cool. So those are your personal best practices then.
That's just getting primed for sleep.
Yeah.
Then we have a 4-magnet earth pulse system.
Yeah.
We sleep with it set on recover mode, which is 9.6 hertz, which is the sweet spot from all of the research that has. And there is a ton of research on that. PEMF at 9.6 hertz. The Russians, starting in the 1950s, started working with PEMF for the space program.
Yep.
Very few people know this because they had more engineers than doctors. And in the space race with the U.S., they know we can't send any doctors up there. So if they get in big shit trouble, you guys need to figure out, you engineers, how to help them.
Yep.
So they found that PEMF at like 9.6 hertz could actually heal wounds quicker, heal bones quicker. I mean, all kinds of stuff.
Not surprising. I mean, there's increasing research around frequency modalities.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, so we have an earth pulse with 4 magnets. So we sleep in a full-size bed. We finally got around to upgrading our mattress 2 years ago to an Essentia, one of their sort of middle-line mattresses. They supposedly have a patent on improving your REM sleep with the mattress. I have never found it, but but it's a really cool. It's a nice mattress. I mean, very low VOC.
Yep.
All that stuff. Then we also have each side we have chili pads.
Yep.
And that's a huge difference.
For sure. Temperature. Cold room, whether it's air temperature or using a chill pad.
Right. We've never had a house that you could put AC into. So
yeah.
So chili pads it.
Yeah.
So those are probably the big ones. And you know, we've always for the most part lived luckily in neighborhoods that there are no street lights and not a lot of houses, very low density.
So where are you now? Are you, I forget, are you northeast or are you?
Yes, we're right outside of Norwich, Vermont.
Yep.
In West Hartford on the White River, which flows in the Connecticut River.
Yep.
People that know this region, but we don't really have any close neighbors, and so it's reasonably dark even without curtains.
Same here. I'm up in Truckee, California,
Right,
up
I
in
know.
the high Sierras.
Yes.
It's pitch black at night in the bedroom,
Yeah.
and
My
just
instinct.
cold and optimized
That's
for good high quality sleep.
Yes.
So it's been great.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good.
So the other thing we wanted to do was nerd out on some data. And I know that you mentioned to me previously that you had done a lot of ultra endurance
Yeah.
sports previously. Probably like many of us, you trashed yourself at one point in time through different modalities. I know I certainly did. And it's taken me a few years to recover. And that forces you to look at a lot more than the things you mentioned. It forces you to start looking at biomarkers. Oh, hey, we got a guest on the show here. Who's that, by the way?
This is River. He's,
River. And I see the cat in the background too.
Yeah. I see that.
River made a cameo on the show. Well, this is going on YouTube. So there's River and Chuck. So yeah, I know you've been using our system for a while, which gets into a lot of the lab tests. And when I got sick, for me, the key was actually having access to the blood test results
Yes.
right next to the data I was collecting myself. That's the feedback loop that I wanted to close for people so that they could see this for themselves. That's how my functional doctor worked with me. He said, okay, here's your 3-month protocol, rerun the labs, and we'd try to make these numbers move. So that's why we put together Heads Up, and you've been giving us a ton of great feedback. You've been pounding on it for a while now. So I thought we could nerd out on a little bit of data. And I know that we don't integrate everything that you track, particularly a lot of the Garmin data, for instance, the training data, but you've got a pretty robust profile in there. So let's look at some data. This is Data-Driven Health Radio after all. So we'd love to get Chuck's core metrics in Heads Up Health. And then we're also going to take a quick tour through the Oura Cloud. I think most people interact with the Oura mobile app, which is awesome. But there's a lot more that can be visualized in the Oura Cloud. So we're going to do a screen share. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see it live. If you are listening to the podcast, we do attach the YouTube videos to the podcast, and you can also check it out on YouTube. So go ahead and share your screen, Chuck, if you would be so kind, and we'll jump into some numbers here.
Okay, so I'm going to have, cat, get out of the way.
Another cameo.
Oh, cat cameo.
Yeah.
Let me get to the other second. How do I switch? Oh, do I click? Okay. Okay, share screen. There you go.
Yep.
Okay.
Bingo. Got it. Yep. All right. So for those who are only listening, right now we're looking at Chuck's Heads Up Health dashboard. He's going to take us through his core metrics and some of the things that are most important for him as part of his daily regimen. Go for it, Chuck.
Bright lights. Okay, so yeah, one of the things I liked about this right off was I was able to hide tiles, add tiles, and move tiles so that I could put the stuff that I'm most interested in at the top.
Yep.
And so, right off the bat, when I log in here in the morning, I'm always looking at my sleep, which I check my Oura app also.
I got to say, man, as soon as I get out of bed in the morning, that's the first thing I check. You guys have got me. It's like so exciting for me to check the Oura stats. It's like the first thing I do when I wake up. It's a little bit sad, but it's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of these things after we go to the cloud. But
respectable score there, by the way, 87.
Yeah. So this is the readiness score. HRV is in there, but it really doesn't. HRV is included as part of that score.
Correct.
But per se. Resting heart rate. I think this is the average, right? Is what we said.
Yeah. So the way the Oura API works is it will send you through the API. It will send you the absolute lowest measurement.
Yeah.
And it will also give you an average through the night. So we took that number as the proxy number.
That's good too. I mean, because if somebody was comparing this, like I'll show you to say Fitbit, the Ionic.
Yep.
They're also doing an average.
Yep.
But I mean, they may just take it for the whole day. I'm not sure how they do.
So jumping back to sleep, Chuck, everyone's hacking the deep sleep number on Oura. And admittedly, there was one paper that came out that showed that Oura was underestimating deep, overestimating REM. Again, it's impossible to compare this to a state-of-the-art sleep lab, which is exactly what happened. But I've been able to get my deep sleep pretty consistently now up to 45 to 60 minutes. When I first started using the ring, it was atrocious. So have there been any algorithm or firmware changes in the current product, or is it still as is?
Well, and that's one thing, going back just real quick on the, you're talking about the SRI peer-reviewed study comparing the Oura Ring to PSG, which is the gold standard at sleep lab.
Absolutely, yes.
One
I've
thing
had those studies done too.
that a lot of people don't realize is they bought 2 rings from Kickstarter, 2 sizes.
Yeah.
A size 7 and a size 11.
Yep.
And then they got a bunch of kids, I assume they kidnapped from Stanford College and ran them through this. Admittedly, at the sleep conference, one of the people, the head lead researchers, said that even if the ring didn't fit well, some of the people wanted to wear it on their ring finger because they felt better about it.
Yep.
So what happens if the ring twists on your finger, the current generation ring, it can skew deep in REM sleep.
Got it.
And what I would point people, if they they're hung up on that, is it's not peer reviewed, but we did a study with the Finnish Health Group where they had fitted rings, and we came out in, I think it was like 78% on REM in deep sleep as opposed to like in the 50s with SRI.
Yep.
And the important thing about that is even if you go to a sleep lab with PSG, if they have 2 technicians score it, they're only like 82% in agreement. So even sleep labs aren't exact. So when you're talking 82 to 78, not a big difference.
Yeah, I remember when I did my sleep study, this was years ago, I did go to the Stanford sleep study in Redwood City, which is their sleep center is considered one of the top in the world. I got the diagnostic sleep study. They actually let me wear the Zeo while I was doing the sleep study. It took a little bit of negotiation because, you've got like 60 electrodes all over your head and your legs. And then they had to, slide in this Zeo device so that it fit properly. Anyhow, I digress. So
I hope to get that, like the histogram comparison, because I did a sleep study in Finland with 2 Oura rings on, one in each hand, with all the stuff in your head. So I hope to have that at some point so I can share that.
So just to reiterate, I know that just to reiterate, the index finger on the dominant hand with a very snug fitting ring is the absolute best practice to make sure
you're getting the index finger. I'd say these 3 fingers.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yep, that's great.
But size to your non-dominant hand, then move it to the same finger on your dominant hand while you sleep.
I want to just make sure we hammer that home for people who have the product and may not be aware of it or are thinking of getting it, because it's an important detail.
Yeah, I would like to point out one other thing. The new ring has improved sensors, so it will tolerate twisting. We believe we haven't we've got to prove this as scientists. But it should be able to tolerate twisting more than the original ring. Because it improves sensor technology. Okay.
So okay, cool. So you've got sleep, you've got the HRV readiness score, resting heart rate, calorie burn. Now we're on row 2 here. So it looks like you've got some MyFitnessPal data coming in as well. Insulin load and calories consumed.
That's the thing. I actually am most interested personally from a dietary standpoint on that number, insulin load.
Yeah, we actually have to derive that. Obviously, MyFitnessPal doesn't calculate it, but we have the formula in our app to calculate that.
Yes, I don't know why it says MyFitnessPal there, but anyway, no, that's
that's because we're deriving it from the MFP data.
But that to me, I love that number, because going through the day as I checked on my phone or up on the web here, I just look and see how I'm going against, say, 75, and I know from that number I can correlate that to what my glucose is going to be in the morning. So
which is the number that's right up there next, which is fasting glucose. My most important metric, I track a ton of stuff, but for me, it's my fasting blood sugar. I wake up in the morning, I check my blood sugar. It's kind of like my report card from the previous day. And it tells me that's the main metric I could use to manage metabolism, is just that number.
This one was after tea and chi and a cup of bulletproof coffee. So it wasn't fasting per se.
It's still pretty incredibly.
But I mean, in 99 here on the week long. I should be in the high 60s, but between moving from Colorado to Vermont, not having internet and having going to coffee shops, I have not been as zipped up on my health and exercise as I wanted.
Totally. Yeah. When you're not
So
away from, yeah, it's hard.
my metabolism, I think I put on probably 8 pounds in pure fat.
So, I mean, those are great numbers. For me, when I'm dialed in, I'm high 70s, low 80s. That's kind of like where I really like to be. I agree with you. When you're on the road, you don't have all of the comforts and the tools at your disposal. It ticks up, but yours is actually even lower than mine.
Yeah, during the holidays, when you're with family and friends, you make bad decisions.
Yes. Cool. So insulin load is a big one for you then.
Yes, that is.
And
I'm not a big ketone checker. So I've got the Mojo track.
Same here. Yep.
Yeah, and so I've checked my ketones a couple times, but they're pathetic. But yeah, so my glucose ketone index is like really bad.
Yeah. I can get that number down. Sometimes when I'm really dialed in, I'll get it down under 2. I haven't really pushed it. I know that there's some research, not research, but some of the guys like Dom and Dr. Seyfried will say that it's actually very therapeutic once a year to push yourself into a state where you're below 2 on the GKI, at least for a couple days as a cancer prevention technique, which I think is incredibly fascinating.
Yes.
Cool. So you've got the macro data there. Looks like a carb tolerance test as well.
Turn this down a little bit. I'm blinded. Blowing the full blue light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're trashing Chuck's sleep right here live.
Right. So some of these other things getting lower down, I really don't look at.
Same.
I mean, I'll glance at like, fat, working towards my goal.
Yep.
I never have a trouble with eating too little fat.
Yep.
Protein, I never usually hit the target. And these goals set here that I set in MyFitnessPal are based on, the Keto Gains formula.
Yeah, that's the one that I would typically use as well.
Right.
Again, I mostly just use, these days I don't track the macros so much. I just use the fasting glucose numbers, quite honestly.
And then I had one carb tolerance test after I had a nuclear meltdown from too many races, long distance races. And this actually shows a over responder. I mean, this is not a good thing. Because after I hit the 124, it went down to 48.
Yep.
So I overshot dramatically.
Yep.
But this was at the beginning of a bunch of tests. I went to a functional doctor. He'd gotten out of being a cardiologist, and he didn't charge me for anything. He said, "You're an anomaly." At this point, I was 51 years old, running great distances, and he's like, "I want to study you." So he did ultrasounds and CT scans and this stuff, all kinds of blood tests, and he put me back together. In 6 months, I was racing again. So
48 at the 3 hour. That's like a huge compensation.
Yeah.
I mean,
so that's not a good.
Usually insulin sensitive there.
Yeah, people might say, "Wow, that's good," and they're like, "No."
Yeah.
But, yeah. So I got a lot better after that.
Yep. Any others on here that are really important for you? I know they kind of, as we get further down, they become less important. I think that's just
you're not pulling the various companies' VO2 max calculations like Garmin. First Beat Technology has added that to. They basically took what they used to have on a computer and finally got that into firmware. And so the new Garmin's I mentioned, the Phoenix 5 and the 935, they have that in firmware now, so they actually calculate your VO2 max.
Yeah, I got to see if they publish it in the API, though. That's the thing. If they do, we can get it.
And then Fitbit and the Ionic, they refer to it as cardio fitness, I think. And that's a VO2 max. It's an estimation, but they're pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, that's something you mentioned to me, and I need to continue seeing if that's actual data that we can get our hands on.
So that, I don't...
So what's your top 2? If you had to pick 2, you could only track 2 things. What would you say? I mean,
I would probably do my insulin load and my readiness score.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that would be my big.
Yeah, for me, it would be definitely fasting glucose and readiness.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one. But the reason that's I don't think about glucose as much, and we've talked about this, is I long for the day when I have continuous glucose monitoring.
Well, hey, I'm in the same boat. I think that's going to be the key to helping people understand, maybe people who don't have access to all of the information that you and I have, but something simple, a consumer grade device where they can just see their glucose going through the roof after they eat what they think may be healthy meals. But that's really going to help us course correct.
Right.
So,
Yeah, this is the one thing that really could help people figure out that their metabolism is severely broken
yeah.
and what to fix it.
It's a prevention technique as well. I'm sure the companies that sell drugs related to metabolic diseases wouldn't like that too much if everybody was just getting alerts when they do something where the glucose goes through the roof and then can just self-correct. I
Right.
think that is an awesome day when that finally comes along. We're actually integrating the Dexcom API now,
Right.
and there's another consumer device. It's called the Libra.
Yeah, Libra. Yeah, by Abbott. Yeah.
Yeah, that's doing 15-minute samples. Dexcom's 5-minute samples. So hopefully there will be something that's available. Those still, you need a prescription for both of those devices.
Right. Yeah, I
So
saw.
hopefully there will be something soon where you don't.
Yes, well, yeah, you just have to know the right people.
Yep.
Like Thaddeus from Primal Hack is doing a test right now.
Yep.
But yeah, just as a side, there's interesting correlations that two researchers have found between the sleep metrics that they've tracked on their Oura Ring and glucose.
Yep.
So,
Well, what we want to do is actually get the 5-minute Dexcom samples and start correlating that with the 5-minute HRV samples.
yes.
And also with the MyFitnessPal data, and starting to help people understand what food choices caused blood sugar to go up, or what's the correlation between stress and blood sugar for people. So HRV and blood sugar, that's part of our future vision, is to be able to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the guy you had on with the other app, the macro app,
My macros, yep.
Cal doesn't do is, it would be nice if instead of just having breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner snack,
Yep.
they actually put in the time you ate something.
Yep.
Even like supplements, because that's one thing I was talking to Thaddeus about Owens, is doing, wearing something like a Libra for a week to try and find correlations.
Yep.
You want to see like, oh, that's when I took supplements and those actually spiked my glucose. That's good to know.
Yep.
And as Rob Wolf found out, doing, finger pricks to find out which foods impacted him more than others.
That's why we built the carb tolerance test. One of the first things my functional doc said was, go eat your favorite breakfast, whatever it is, I don't care, bacon and eggs, whatever, pancakes, he didn't care, and test your blood sugar before you eat it, 30 minutes postprandial, 60 minutes, 120 and 180. And he wanted to see those curves. And then when Rob published the book, that's when we said, okay, let's build this feature so people can do a glucose tolerance test on anything. And we have users who test some of their favorite foods and their blood sugar is still skyrocketing up at the 3-hour mark. And they're like, oh, okay, crap. I guess I better not eat that anymore. But you wouldn't know unless you did those tests.
Right. If you want to know one of my best tests, the people from Dry Farm Wines, they said it's keto friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I tested my glucose, my ketones, drank a bottle of wine by myself.
Yes.
I did the tolerance test.
You're a martyr, Chuck.
Hey, I was, and it didn't change. I mean, it really worked.
Yeah, well, I've hung out with those guys, and they send every bottle of wine to an independent lab to get tested before they ship it out.
Another good one is Fitvine.
Yep.
California, they make a good wine, low carb.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's awesome, Chuck. Those are great metrics, and I know you've got a lot of blood work in here. We don't need to get it to that level of detail, but
adding more of that when once
LabCorp. Having trouble hearing you, Chuck.
Oh yeah, just can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Okay. So yeah, LabCorp's coming. I think we did some concierge data entry for you as well. So for those people who aren't familiar, you can just upload a PDF file. We'll do all the data entry for you, because a lot of people have blood work in paper, PDF, all of that other kind of stuff. So
I was able to export my data out of WellnessFX.
Yep.
Sent to your partner.
Yep. Dr. Josh.
It's cleaned it up. And,
yep.
and did a super job. And this is a great way to visualize it. And these are all pretty old, as you can see, because
Yep.
I had
2014.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get the LabCorp integration working soon. We've got Quest. We've got thousands of facilities in there. LabCorp is a big one because a lot of the functional and integrative doctors use LabCorp because they give you the lowest rock bottom pricing on blood tests. So I'm told we'll have that API available in heads up in about 2 weeks.
Okay, good.
And today is what, Feb 2? So mid-Feb?
Yes.
It's a nice CRP reading there.
Yeah, I've never had a lot of trouble with inflammation, but I had some thyroid issues, and
Yep, same.
other testosterone was in the tank after I had run a bunch of marathons, a bunch of ultras, including ending with a 100-kilometer race in 2011, and that's when the wheels came off. And
We've all been there at least once.
Yeah, my functional doctor said, "You have the testosterone of a 67-year-old."
Not what you want to hear.
Yeah, but he didn't.
That's awesome, Chuck. Yeah, go ahead.
What's that?
Looks great.
Yeah. Okay.
So, give us a quick tour on Aura Cloud. We're coming up on an hour here. It's been a great discussion, but there's a ton of great data in there as well. So, what are some of your favorite metrics in the Aura Cloud?
Right. So the dashboard in the cloud is very similar, and it'll probably even look the same as the app experience at some point. So at the top, you have just these three things trended together.
Yep.
You can use the arrows to go back and forth. Like that.
A little easier to browse through your history here than it is on the phone.
Oh, absolutely. And so like on the phone.
92 sleep. Nice work.
The one I was showing on your site was yesterday.
Yep.
So these are the contributors that go into the sleep score.
Yep.
And then you have your standard what sleep labs like to look at, the histogram.
Yep.
You go through here. And I'll show a little trick out in a second when we get to another tab. But some people want to see actually how restless was I last night.
Yep.
I'll figure that out. This is the resting heart rate, and this shows I was pretty high early in the night.
Yep.
2 nights ago, I think we drank a bottle of champagne, had a late dinner. So that was what happened
That
there.
correlates very well with that resting heart rate at 4 in the morning.
Was not a dry farm champagne.
No.
This is something that I look at every morning. One of the first things I look at. It's a little broken up here. That you can see there's a gap in the data.
Mm-hmm.
That's where there was probably too much movement, so there wasn't a clean 5-minute sample that generated HRV.
Yep.
But as you can see from this, it trended up overnight while I was sleeping. And this comes back to I was mentioning that company EMFit.
Yep.
HRV through the night. One thing this is indicative and shows you is that your nervous system recovered while you were sleeping.
Because the HRV is getting higher as the night goes on. Is that right?
Goes on, right. So this is like the long-term HRV over months. This is your nightly graph. And so I look at that and I hope to see it, like if I had a hard workout or a stressful day, if I see that trending up, I know that my nervous system is recovered.
So that's awesome. That I think is a subtle detail, but you could log in here and actually see, okay, I trained hard on Thursday. I want to see that my HRV is going up through the night as an indicator that my body is indeed recovering.
Right. It's another more proof that you're recovering.
Yep, cool.
Yeah. So then
awesome.
Activity, oops, got to go back a day. Because the cloud just gets the activity the next day. But one thing, this is over a 24-hour period. So if you look at during the night, if
yep.
you have, average METs, like the medium METs and stuff, you can actually use the activity graph to see how active you were while you're sleeping. If that makes any sense.
Yep.
So some people use it for that. Again, you have your contributors.
That's the thing I always get dinged on from the Aura sleep data is just restlessness. I don't obviously feel it, but one of the common insights from Aura is that it was a restless sleep.
Right.
So that's helpful to see. And that's part of the stuff I'm looking to hack with some of the things you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So
readiness.
And
Yeah, this is awesome. This is just such incredible information. Everyone loves it. Everyone I've talked to just loves this data from the Ring. I'm really excited for the next one just because it is going to be a smaller form factor. And then I would wear it pretty much 24/7. And then just in closing, Chuck, maybe a few minutes on what the Gen 2 Ring is going to do. I've read it all, so I know. I can't wait. But give us a few highlights on that, and we'll close out.
You know, this first generation Ring was really a market test.
Yep.
And it did really well considering that. And, you know, but the thing is, even though a lot of people love it and can't live without it, it's a big ring. And especially women, it's, you know, a little bit offensive.
Yep.
So the new ring is the size of a man's average size wedding band.
Yep.
Much smaller. It's made of titanium.
Yep. Looks beautiful.
So it's much lighter. It has improved infrared sensors. It has 2 temperature sensors I won't get into because it'll take too long. They added a gyro on top of the accelerometer.
Yep. 24/7 HRV. Awesome.
Well, that's been mentioned, but because of the improved sensors, it won't be 24/7 per se. We already do it during the day when you're not really active, but the new ring will tolerate a little bit more activity than the old one. The original ring, you had to put your hands on a desk and stay still for 5 minutes, turn the sensors back on and get enough data. But with the new one, you should be able to have some common movements to still be collecting.
Cool.
HR and HRV. Yeah, so the thing with the gyro is that'll make it easier for us to train the ring to identify activities. That out of the box day one because it takes time and money to do that, to train to different activities.
And what about meditation mode? I caught something on meditation mode because one of the things with meditation, you're like, okay, I'm sitting there. Is anything happening? Am I doing this right? And one of the things I'm super excited about is the ability to actually quantify a meditation session in terms of an HRV improvement, which is really exciting.
So right now, even behind the scene, anybody that's had a first generation ring, when you're not moving at all, like say you're really still meditating, turn the infrared sensors on. So we actually have all that HRV data, but we never showed it to you. The app will show you restful periods, but they're still working through the sort of how the feature set will look, the use case. But I assume you might have something like a starting meditation, finishing meditation, and I don't know if you'll be able to see live on the screen the HRV plot. I don't know enough about that quite yet.
Well, it's exciting. It looks like there will be a way to do a before and after on a meditation session, which again,
we hopefully can look at is developing what's called an SDK, which you probably know about. It's sort of an API for the hardware. Because there are other companies that make meditation apps. For instance, like I'm not saying these people are the ones, but like Kevin Rose's new app, Oak. It would be nice if you could actually pull that Oura data directly into the meditation app. Then you could see it streaming, like if you're using an app like that.
I'd love to find a good meditation app with an API. Haven't found one yet.
Yeah, I don't know what, I imagine eventually Kevin Rose may have an API. I wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I've pinged Headspace a couple times, but no love there. So we'll get there.
He'd be an entrepreneur, geeky kind of guy. If anybody does it, he will.
Cool. Well, this has been awesome, Chuck. I think this is hopefully the first of many of these episodes. I think we could probably get back together once the new product comes out. And pardon me?
I could talk for hours.
Me too. We're kindred spirits there for sure, and we do talk for hours. We're going back and forth pretty much every day on chat and stuff like that. So I'm really glad we connected. Thanks for all your support for Heads Up Health, everything you do for us. We're really happy to be partners with you guys. If anyone wants to get the ring, you can pre-order at headsuphealth.com/Oura. We have a discount code there. The new one's coming out in April. And we covered a ton of great data today. So thanks, Chuck. It's been a ton of fun and can't wait to have you back and go deeper once the new ring is out.
All right. Sounds cool.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
Sleep well.